What's going on out there, good people? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? We will be titling this, There's Power in Unbelief. There is power in unbelief. We will be coming out of Mark 6, 1 through 6. Mark 6, 1 through 6. All right, let's dive. Let me kind of set the foundation on there's power in unbelief. Let me kind of set that foundation. We must first understand that when you live a life of sin, we all live lives of sin. We've all traveled down dark paths and dark roads, and we all done some things in our lives that we are not proud of. And when God has called you, when God has specifically called you as an individual, He individually called you, He's going to qualify you. When God individually calls you, He qualifies you for the calling that He's placed over your life. And in that, there may be some family members, there may be some friends, there may be some co-workers, there may be some associates, there may be some people in and around your life that cannot accept that transformation. There may be some people in your life or around your life, whether they family or friends or associates, co-workers, whatever have you, they may not be able to accept the transformation that is going to take place in your life once destiny and purpose aligns in your life. Once you catch destiny and purpose and it aligns in your life, they may not be able to accept the transformation that will begin to take place. I like to call it undergoing construction. They might not be able to accept who you are when you have undergone construction and been spit back out. In other words, when you are reborn, right? When you are reborn, when you are born again, all right? They may not be able to accept this person. They may not be able to accept. Why? Well, more times than none, it is unfamiliar. And we fear what we don't understand as people. You are an unfamiliar person to them. You walking different, you talking different, you moving different, you thinking different. And it is unfamiliar to what they are familiar to. You are an unfamiliar creature to them because you have a transformation that has taken place in your life that calls you to be different than what they have known for the last however many years they've known you. And instead of accepting and embracing that transformation, more times than none, they say, oh, so-and-so think he better than everybody. Oh, he think he better than everybody. Oh, she thinks she better than everybody. Oh, she done found God, now she all holy and sanctified. Oh, he done found God, now he all holy and sanctified. Other than embracing the transformation, they come against who God has qualified. Other than embracing the transformation, they come against who God has qualified. So the question you should be asking yourselves, am I disqualifying who God has qualified because I knew them prior to their transformation? Or because I knew them prior to them undergoing construction? Who are you discrediting that God has called and qualified? Who are you discrediting and disqualifying in your life because you knew who they were prior to their transformation? Don't ever be so stuck on who somebody was to the fact that you can't benefit who they are now. You can't benefit from who they are now because you still stuck on who they was. Don't ever become so hard-hearted to where you cannot get a message from God because of the messenger. Ooh. I'm going to say that one more time. Don't ever get so hard-hearted in your life that you cannot accept a message from God because who the messenger is. God chooses and uses whom he please. Whom he pleased. So whoever God pleases and wants to use to deliver his message or push his word or advance his kingdom, he can do so. He is the creator. He is the author and the editor. So if he wants to edit a specific time in your life or use a specific person to get a specific message to you, he'll do so. My only thing is, who are you rejecting or disqualifying that God has qualified because you knew that individual prior to their transformation? You knew that individual prior to their transformation, so you writing them off. But God has qualified that individual. God has called that individual. God has laid something on that individual's heart and mind to give to you, and you've wrote it off because you have disqualified the qualified. I hope this ain't too much for you, and I only wanted to use this a message and push it to say, there's power in unbelief, because if you don't believe that God has called and qualified this individual or the individuals that he's placed in your life, then you won't have no belief in them. You won't even have belief in the fact that they've undergone construction or belief in the fact that they've had transformation take place in their lives, and God has, you won't even believe the message that the Lord has given them to give you. So I only wanted to push this narrative so that we can stop placing people in these boxes of this is who you are, this is who you are, this is who you are. I mean, believe me, when somebody show you who they are, you should believe them. But when you begin to see the difference in somebody's life from where they came from to where they are now, you should take that unbelief and begin to embrace the transformation that has taken place in their life. You should set your unbelief to the side and embrace the transformation that has begun or started or even finished taking place in that individual's life, so that you don't miss what God is trying to give you. You don't miss the message that God is trying to get through to you, all because you are looking at the messenger for who they was and not who they are now. Don't say, oh, that's just my brother, he ain't. Oh, that's just my sister, she ain't. You don't know who God has called and qualified. You don't know who God has called and qualified. You cannot be dismissive to the word of God. Neither can you be dismissive to the people of God, because you never know what the Lord is trying to tell you through those individuals. So there is power in disbelief or unbelief. There is power, the type of power that can cause you your life. The type of power that can cause you the very things that you pray for, the very things that you've been asking God for, might be connected or tied to the individual that you refuse to see as qualified. I'm going to say that one more time. What you have been praying for and asking God for can be tied to the individual that you believe, that you refuse to believe God has called and qualified. So your rejection towards who God has qualified and your rejection for the message that's coming through that individual is causing you to miss out on your blessings. It's causing you to miss out on your blessings. Let's dive into it. I just wanted to set a little foundation on where I was going with it so that you guys can have some understanding, to shed different light on this message. The prophet is rejecting his own home. I wanted to shed a different light on this message, and just to show that, not only is the prophet, rejected in his own home, the qualified, the ones that God has qualified and called are rejected amongst their own family and amongst their own home and amongst the people that are around them, and friends and everybody that knew him and grew up with him. 9 times out of 10, there will be a lot of rejection there. So if God has called and qualified you and you're dealing with rejection or you're dealing with unbelief, there is power in that. But it won't be on you. It will only be on you if you allow that to take you out of what God has called you to do. If you allow it to reposition you, if God has positioned you and you allow that disbelief or that unbelief to reposition you, only then will God hold you accountable for it. But if you stand down and you deeply root yourself in this word and you do what the Lord has called you to do, you will be free and clear of anything when it comes down to it. And the person that has rejected you will have to face the living God. So, all right. So Mark 6, 1-6. Let's dive into it. Jesus left that part of the country and returned with his disciples to Nazareth, his hometown. The next Sabbath, he began teaching in the synagogues, and many who had heard him were amazed. They asked, where did he get all this wisdom and power to perform such miracles? Then they scoffed. He's just a carpenter. The son of Mary, and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon. Simon is Peter. Simon was Peter's name. Okay, Simon and Peter is the same person. Later on in chapter, God changed his name from Simon to Peter. So Simon hadn't quite yet become Peter, but later on in biblical scriptures, you will see that he had a name change to Peter. But Simon is Peter, okay? And Simon. And his sisters live right here among us. They were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. They were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. Let's back up at they scoff. So as he was teaching in the synagogues, and he was preaching the word, they were amazed at his wisdom. They were amazed at his knowledge, so much to the point to where they began to question and say, my, where did he get this wisdom and this knowledge from? Where did this come from? Without even receiving a revelation, they came to a conclusion. The reason that they did not receive a revelation is because their hearts were hard. I don't want you to miss this. Let's back up because I don't want you to miss this. It says, we had Mark 6 and 2. The next Sabbath he began teaching in the synagogues, and many who heard him were amazed. They were amazed. They asked, where did he get this wisdom and power to perform such miracles? They were amazed. They were amazed. But then it says at the beginning of 3, then they scoffed. So they did. So after asking a question, where did he get all of this wisdom and all of this knowledge from? Before they can even receive a revelation, they scoffed. They had already come to a conclusion. Oh, he's just a carpenter. Oh, he's just my brother. Oh, he's just she's just my sister. Oh, I've been knowing her all my life. I don't know. Maybe I don't know where. I'm not gonna say where the wisdom come from. I'm not even gonna wait from the revelation from God. I'm not even gonna wait on God to give me a revelation on what I'm asking Him. I'm not even gonna wait for the revelation of which I'm asking for. I'm just gonna come up with my own conclusion about who this person is. They didn't receive a revelation. And the reason that they did not receive a revelation on what they were asking is because they already had hard hearts. They already had placed in their mind that he's just a carpenter. They had already placed in their mind, we know his family. They had already placed in their mind that he was just a man. They had already placed in their mind. They knew nothing about his divinity. They didn't know that this was God, the Lamb, because they placed in their mind that he's just a carpenter. They didn't wait for a revelation. They had already made up their mind. They already had hard hearts because they knew him prior to the transformation. They already had hard hearts because they knew him. Oh, that's Mary's son. They knew him. They knew who he was. So they rejected the transformation. It would have been kind of hard to reject a prophet telling you about your life story and doing miracle after miracle after miracle. But I'm not showing you none of those things. I'm not doing I'm not pulling out the fanciest miracles that I can pull out because of your unbelief. I'm not showing you what all God can do because of the belief that you don't have in me. I'm not showing you. So it's real easy to have unbelief in that situation. I'm not showing you anything. Now, had he been showing them turning water into wine while he was there and showing them certain things he did prior to getting there, they would have had reason to believe. They would have had reason to believe. Let's go on. Then they scoffed. He's just a carpenter, son of Mary, brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon. And his sisters live right here among us. They were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. They were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. They refused to believe the transformation. They refused to believe him undergoing construction because they knew him as Mary's son and they didn't know him as the Son of Man. They did not know him as the Son of Man. They did not know him as the Lamb. They did not know him as the living sacrifice. They did not know him as the sacrificial lamb. They did not know him as the living bread. They did not know him as that. They knew him as Mary's son, the carpenter. Then Jesus told them a prophet is honored everywhere except in his own hometown and among his relatives and his own family. A prophet is accepted. That means that God can call and qualify you, and you can go off and do great things and be accepted. The word that you preach and teach can be accepted, adhered to by other people all across the world, but except by the people you expect to support you the most. But except by the people that you expect to support you the most. Your family, your siblings, your loved ones, your cousins, your associates, rejection from within. See, it's something when you get rejection on the outside from people you don't know. It don't hurt as much. But when you get rejection from the people you expect to accept you for who you are and who God has called you to be, oh, that's tough. That's a different type of pain. That is it's a different type of pain. But I want you to understand that even Christ went through it. Even Christ went through it. So we ain't facing nothing that he ain't faced. God will place people in your life and place people on your path that is directly connected to your purpose and your destiny, and you ought to go with them so that they can help advance you in that season of your life. It don't always have to be your family. You know, they had this saying that blood is thicker than water. Not all the time. Sometimes that blood can have a little water in it. Sometimes that blood can have a little water in it. All right. So now we're on 5. And because of their unbelief, he couldn't do any miracles among them except place his hands on a few sick people and heal them. So there's power in unbelief. Because of their unbelief, he couldn't even do the type of miracles that he done prior to this. He was that deeply sorrowed and that deeply moved by their unbelief that it didn't even activate the divinity in him. It didn't even activate the healing power in him. It didn't activate the blessing power in him. There's power in unbelief. It says, and he was amazed at their unbelief. He was amazed. He couldn't even believe how these people had that much. Their heart was that hard because they could not accept transformation. They could not accept who he is now because they known him as Mary's son, the carpenter. So they could not accept that he was the living bread. They could not accept that he was the living sacrifice. They could not accept that he was the Holy One. They could not accept that he was the one to sit at the right hand of God. They could not accept that he's the one with all power in his hand. They could not accept. We must magnify the Lord because Lord he is. And they could not accept it because they knew him as Mary's son, the carpenter. I want to ask you a question, family. And the question is, who are you rejecting that God has called? Who are you dismissing that God has called and qualified and placed them in your inner circle or near your circle? Who are you rejecting and dismissing that God has qualified and placed in your inner circle, all because you refuse to accept or believe the transformation or the construction that they undergo? When God calls, he qualifies. We have to stop looking at people for who they were and start looking at people for who they are now. How much more of a blessing it would be if we were to open our eyes. How much more blessed would we be if we begin to open our eyes and look at what God has placed right in front of us. See, a lot of us go off looking for spiritual parents and spiritual guidance and spiritual leadership and this and that, that we overlook what God has already placed in front of us. We have overlooked what God has already placed in front of us. 9 times out of 10, God has already supplied you with all that you would need. Start looking at what you got rather than what you don't got. Start looking at what you got. Start looking at what resources you have, and stop looking at what resources is not available to you. And start cultivating what you have already. Start planting the seeds that you have already. Then harvest that. Be a good steward over that, and God will multiply. Stop rejecting who God has called because they look like who you knew at a specific point in time in their life, and you are not accepting the blessing that the Lord has given that individual. Listen, family, I love y'all, man. God is love. God is peace. As always, I'm out.